Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox. Happy Friday and welcome to almost the weekend. We have a lot to talk about on this Labor Day weekend. I know a lot of people, they want to know their forecast, right? You've got football going on. You've got plans for your 3-day weekend. So what's it going to be like out there? Well, it's kind of a tale of two seasons. Some of us have already started fall, and that's how it's going to stay this weekend. Others will still be feeling the heat. So we'll talk about those temperatures. Do you need that light jacket on Friday, Saturday evening? Or are you good in a t-shirt? We'll talk about it. Other than that, we've got a few isolated storms across the plains today and on the southern side of the U.S. So we're talking about places like Houston, New Orleans. And today is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Now today, 20 years ago, that Category 5 hurricane made landfall in New Orleans, a historic hurricane for many, many reasons. And we'll talk about that, and we'll show some really impactful pictures here in just a few minutes. Let's go ahead and talk about your storm reports from yesterday. A little surprise that we had yesterday was a tornado down in Florida. So we had actually 2 tornado reports in this area and several tornado warnings. Not something that we expected, but always possible, especially this time of the year whenever land spouts are pretty common. As for your plains weather yesterday, we did see a few strong, severe storms. We got some pretty decent hail out of just 1 or 2 of those, but it didn't hit much. Again, these were in eastern Colorado and in the western side of Kansas. So we told you yesterday that if we could get that perfect storm that happened right along 76, if we could get that in Denver, there would be a lot of people impacted. However, Denver missed out once again yesterday, and that storm went obviously just a little bit farther to the east. Now today, the entire storm risk is to the east of Denver, so you're in the clear for severe storms today. Most of those storms will be up in Nebraska, where we have a level 2, a slight risk for storms today, highlighted there in yellow. Now these Nebraska storms are going to be pretty widespread, so we've got scattered showers and storms today, and then we're going to have more of a wind risk as we head farther down to the south. For tomorrow, we don't have a risk on the forecast quite yet. I think if we do see any storms, flooding is going to be the main risk this weekend. And on Sunday, very similar. We don't have anything severe in the forecast. However, we can't forget about that flooding risk. So let's talk about what we've going on across the country. We have several fronts in play here, and that's going to impact the next few days. We first have that cold front that sweeps through the Midwest, bringing us some chilly and crisp air, really feeling like autumn for a lot of us, especially up in our Midwest states. We've got another stationary front that's been causing problems here lately. That's what helped to cause those storms yesterday. It's going to help to cause storms once again today. Another stationary front farther down to the south. Now, if you're in places like Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, you remember this front, okay? You remember all of that rain that we got on Wednesday, Thursday, and now that has continued to slide down to the south, finally by Friday morning and afternoon, sitting across the eastern side of Texas and into Louisiana, causing a flood risk once again in this area as well. So a little around the radar here. We've got a few showers and storms in the northeastern side of the U.S. Nothing severe up there. There's your flood risk down to the south, and a few isolated to maybe scattered light showers across places like the Four Corners and then all the way up into South Dakota. Now we're going to see more showers and storms. We're going to see more rain start to form in the western side of Nebraska later on today, and we'll talk about that and the severe risk that comes with that. But for right now, it is very fall-like out there. 60s and 70s for most of us across the U.S. Still, some are holding on to those summer-like temperatures. That, unfortunately, is going to be how it's the entire weekend, okay? If you like summer, head down to southern Texas. It's going to stay very, very hot out there, and even portions of the West Coast, it's going to stay hot out there as well. But we'll take a break from temperature talk, and we'll go into your hail model for today. Actually, I'm pretty impressed with the hail model today. It's not going to impact too many people, but Kansas, Nebraska, these areas right here, especially on the western side of the state, and even eastern Colorado, we're starting to see this hail model try to bring in some of those reds and oranges that we like to see for larger hailstones, right? So if you can see those darker oranges, those maybe even red colors, that's going to bring in larger hail to this area. Now, one thing that I see very interesting with this is while we have high lapse rates, which is going to help that hailstone to grow a little bit larger, we also have better storm motion up in Nebraska. Okay, so I'm very interested to see exactly what's going to happen here today. Is it going to be better chances for hail in Nebraska, or are we going to get that one isolated storm on the Kansas and Colorado state line that's going to produce some massive hail? We'll have to see today. And Hunter asking a great question, is Denver in the mix today? Unfortunately, Denver is just a little bit to the west of the risk today. I don't think that you guys are going to get any strong to severe storms. We'll take a look at the timeline in just a few minutes, but Denver today, probably out of that hail risk. You go a little bit farther to the east of Denver and you could probably get some decent storms, especially if you go to the north and up into Nebraska. I know it's not close to Denver. It's a whole different state away. That's where we're going to see the largest hail today. Hen egg, 2-inch size hail for your largest hailstone today. I think that's absolutely possible. I would stick that up in Nebraska, so I would stick that on the western side of the state right there. And then as you head farther down to the south, it's going to be a pretty low chance to get those larger hailstones. As I go down to the south here, I would trend a little bit closer to $half size hail and then more like golf ball to 2-inchers up in Nebraska. So smaller hail, larger hail. Better chances for hail also from McCook to Valentine, Nebraska, just sitting right there on the edge from Nebraska and South Dakota. You go down to, one more time here. You go down to the south and you're going to have more of a wind risk. So let's talk about that wind risk here. You see that highlighted there in blue. 65 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts are absolutely possible this afternoon and evening. Again, I would say Guymon, Tucumcari, Pueblo, your larger risk today is going to be that high wind risk and then larger hail up into Nebraska. We also have a wind risk farther down into Texas and places just to the east of Houston, like Beaumont, Texas, and to the west of Lafayette, Louisiana. It's a low risk. Really, your hazard here is going to be flooding, but it's still on the board, so we wanted to talk about it. Also, one thing to talk about today is that tornado risk, Valentine, McCook, and Colby. So Colby, Kansas, and then McCook and Valentine, Nebraska. We have a level 1 tornado risk. Yes, you could see an isolated tornado or two today, especially from some of those isolated supercells. Let's talk about timing here. Those storms are going to get going, and you're going to see them go up really, really fast this evening. Well, this afternoon, I think technically later this afternoon into early this evening. Meanwhile, farther down to the south, the rain just does not stop in some of our southern states. Again, with that flood risk, and I know you've heard me say it like 5 times now, but we're going to continue to talk about it later on in the forecast. I want to talk about the tornado, hail, and wind risk first. So we've gone up to Nebraska. Here's McCook, North Platte, Mullen, and Valentine, Nebraska. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to start to see storms in South Dakota. You're going to see those blow up very, very quickly on the central to western side of the state late this afternoon and into this evening. Watch these storms go up. You've got 1, and then all of a sudden you've got 10. So this is going to happen very quickly. This will continue through the late evening hours tonight and into maybe even early tomorrow morning, with the strongest storms happening in the late evening hours. So the sun is about to go down. That's when I think we'll see the largest hailstones and maybe even an isolated tornado or two. But just like what we saw last night, we saw some hail late last night. I think that we could see that again tonight. So timing here could be a long time frame. We could go from afternoon to late tonight. Going down to the south a little bit, where I told you we're going to have that wind risk in play. It's a marginal risk here, a level 1 risk. Let's see storms go up in this area as well. Pretty similar timeline. We're talking about late afternoon, early evening into the overnight hours, depending on where you are. These could be very overnight and late storms for you. You could be sleeping at this point and you could see that flash of lightning out your window, or maybe even hear the rumble of thunder. That could wake you up late tonight and into Saturday morning. Let's take a look at your future radar down in Texas now. Houston to Lake Charles. We're talking about Lafayette and Beaumont, Texas. Could all see, of course, those showers and storms continuing from not only this morning to late this evening. It could be a very, very rainy evening in Houston. And of course, that brings us to your flood risk. We've talked about this multiple times already, but we have several areas across the U.S. in that level 2 flood risk. That means scattered flash flooding is likely for a good amount of the U.S. today. Again, flash flooding, it comes on very quick, and so you're out, you're enjoying dinner, it's been raining all day, but you're not thinking too much about it, and all of a sudden it's difficult to get to your car and maybe even difficult to get back home. So make sure that you avoid those areas that always tend to have water ponding on it, that always tend to flood a little bit easier than others. Avoid those if you have just constant rain over the next 24 hours. For Saturday, we have another chance for a level 2 flood risk out in West Texas and eastern side of New Mexico, and that flood risk relaxes a little bit on Sunday. Now let's talk about what we're expecting over the next 5 days. Yes, okay, so we're going into rainfall here. Here's your rain that you're getting on Saturday out in West Texas. But as we get into the early portion of next week, we've also got a decent amount of rain across the southern and northern side of the U.S. So a lot of people over the next 5 days are in the path for some sort of showers and storms. Now, the good news for some of us, it depends on how you look at it here, is that severe risk is very low. That flooding risk, that's a different story, something that we have to keep an eye on over the next 2 to 3 days. Now remember, that's not just a travel risk, but if you're headed out to the lake this weekend or the river, that means that water levels could also be pretty high. That means that water could be rushing a little bit faster than what you're used to, so you need to take your safety measures for that as well. Future radar on Saturday, is your football game going to be wet with lightning and thunder? It's possible, especially out in West Texas, southern side of the U.S. We are expecting rain over the next 24 hours. You know what we're not expecting? We're not expecting a tropical storm anytime soon. Fernand, now fish storm. I mean, it's been a fish storm. It's a tropical depression, I think at this point, post-tropical cyclone. Now as we move down to the south, just off the coast of Africa, we have a few waves out there that we're keeping an eye on. Basically what this means is that it's the start, it's the very beginning of the formation of a tropical cyclone. Now, if conditions stay just perfect, then we could get a tropical storm by early next week. But for the next 48 hours, we are not expecting any Atlantic activity. Now, as we head into the next 7 days, so maybe this time next week, we could have a totally different story there. But that's still way far off from the U.S. That's still all the way back just off the coast of Africa. So we have a lot of land or a lot of water to travel before that makes impact on the U.S. The next tropical storm name will be Gabrielle. We just saw Fernand. It's up in the northern Atlantic now. Humberto after that, Imelda after that, Jerry, Karen, all on the board here for potential tropical cyclone names for this season. Now, on average, at the very end of the season, we usually have about 14 named storms. 7 of those, so about half of our named storms, will become hurricanes, and about 3 of those will be major hurricanes. Now, last year, we overperformed. We had more named storms than normal, more hurricanes than normal, and more major hurricanes than what we normally see. This year, we expect to be right about average or maybe above normal. But you know, after a very, very slow start to hurricane season, and we're slowing down again, I think a lot of people are wondering, is that actually going to come into fruition? I say yes. I think that that could still happen. And I'll tell you why. Let's just take a look at climatological models here. So if we go back and we say over the last, I think this is the last 30, 40 years, this is very normal. It's very normal to finally get to your peak hurricane season in the middle of September. So we still have several weeks until we would expect to see more Atlantic activity. And let's see, what was our timeline on that here? I think it's over the past 70 years, right? It'll show you right here. Oh, I was way off on that. It's like the past 170 years. Anyway, so climatologically speaking, we are often more active in September and October, and that's exactly what we saw last year, right? We had a very quick start to the hurricane season with Beryl going Cat 5 very, very quickly, but then finally we slowed down in August, pretty similar to this year, and then we picked right back up in September and October. So could we see a very similar outcome this year that we did last year? I think that's absolutely possible. But while we are in this lull, in this quiet tropical and hurricane season, I want to get to Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall 20 years ago today in New Orleans. 20 years ago today. We are on the 20th anniversary of this historic storm, and it is still talked about every single year. That's how impactful it was. Now, New Orleans is no stranger to tropical storms and hurricanes. Actually, over the past 75 years, we've seen tons of tropical storms and hurricanes hit either near or in New Orleans. This is a map here of every storm, every named storm that has hit within 50 miles of New Orleans since 1950. But if we take all of those storms away and we isolate Katrina, what we see here is this storm made landfall not once, but twice in the U.S. And I think a lot of people forget about that. It made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane on August 25th, 2005 in the southern side of Florida. Crossed the peninsula of Florida, continued into the Gulf, and that is where it rapidly intensified and strengthened to a Category 5 hurricane. As it turned to the north, it thankfully weakened to Category 4, and then finally, just before landfall, a Category 3 hurricane, and that is where it made landfall in New Orleans on August 29th, 2005, 20 years ago today. Take a look at some of the very impactful pictures that were taken about 20 years ago. I included pictures here not only from New Orleans, but also from Florida and places near Mobile, Alabama. So just a reminder about Hurricane Katrina and some facts here as we look at these pictures. Because of the extensive impacts of Katrina for multiple states, not just in Louisiana, Katrina still ranks as one of the costliest hurricanes in history, just behind Harvey, Ian, Maria, and Sandy. Hurricane Katrina had a 22-foot storm surge, but I think that it's less about that storm surge and less about that water, that number, and more about just how massive this Category 3 hurricane was. It was a very, very large storm. And remember that, category is based off of wind speed. So Category 3 storm, some people may say, oh, it's not that strong, but it absolutely is. You have to take into account the size of the storm and the impact it's going to make on landfall. And another thing to remember here is that New Orleans it sits below sea level, right? So that low elevation is also going to not help that water intake, okay? You're going to have that water sitting there for quite some time, and that's exactly what we saw. So a very, very impactful hurricane there. 20 years ago today, that storm continued to track to the north into places like Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, and even Ohio. Alrighty, moving on now. I know that was quite intense, right? Hurricane Katrina, 20 years ago today. There's a lot of documentaries out about that right now. But I want to move on to your Labor Day weekend forecast. So we're going to lighten it up just a little bit here. Let's talk about those cooler temperatures and that fall-like weather that we've been feeling over the last few days. That's going to stick around this weekend. A lot of people say that Labor Day weekend is the end of summer, beginning of fall, but it feels like summer already ended. Fall is in full swing here. Take a look at this. Temperatures stay below average all the way through this weekend. Saturday, Sunday, we've got blues and greens all over the board. Now, I called this a tale of two seasons because we do have some warmer weather out on the West Coast, and we have warmer weather down in the far southern side of Texas as well. So some of us are still feeling the warm impacts. Usually we would say, okay, Labor Day weekend, we're going to head down to the south and enjoy that nice warm weather, right? We wouldn't say we're going to head off to the west, but if you chose California as your Labor Day weekend destination spot, you've got very, very nice summer-like weather. 60s and 70s is what we're going to see through the weekend here. 79 in Oklahoma City for your first football game of the season at OU in Norman. It's going to be a gorgeous afternoon. We've got the 80s down in Texas, 89 and 80s and 90s in the far southeastern side of the U.S., but most of us stay for most of our days in the 60s and 70s. It's going to be nice and cool. We have a cold front moving through right now, the Midwest. That's going to bring crisp air, crisp fall-like air to the Midwest. So you guys are going to stay on the cooler side through Memorial Weekend as well. Excuse me, Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend as well. How long is this going to last? Is it just this weekend? Or do we see these cooler temperatures lasting all the way into September? Well, if you were ready for fall to start early, it looks like that's happening. It looks like temperatures are going to stay cooler than normal all the way through the first week of September. And I've looked at some of those longer term models that go out a little bit farther than that first week of September. And it looks like this pattern is going to stay for a while. This cooler, wet pattern is going to stay for a while. So we not only have those cooler temperatures, but lots of chances for rain in the forecast, especially through the central and southwestern side of the U.S. It looks like we do have a chance for more rainfall than what we would normally see this time of the year. That will continue off on the East Coast as well. So we should have really good rainfall totals as we head into the very beginning of September, and some nice cool weather as well. We could probably see scarf weather, light jacket weather come a little bit early this year. I know a lot of people are excited about that. Other pool goers, maybe not so much. All right, thanks for joining us today. Great questions about the Denver hail, so we appreciate you guys jumping in here for that. We will continue to track hail and strong winds, tornadoes through the weekend. So if you want any more weather information, feel free to either DM us or comment on this post about where you're watching from. And as always, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok if you're interested in a hail, wind, or tornado map. Our meteorologists map that 24/7. And so give us a call for that subscription at 855-334-4245 or email us at info@hailtrace.com or head over to our website, hailtrace.com. All right, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we'll see you back here same time, same place for your forecast on Tuesday.